sitting down?
Yeah.
Okay, no, because, yeah, down.
Okay, yeah, that's
If you stand up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Should we go ahead and get started, or? I think American in Paris just let out, so hopefully a few more people trickle in, but I'll go ahead and get started. Do you need me to use the mic, or? Yeah. Okay. Alrighty, so just leaving An American in Paris, that was a huge hit for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. It won 6 Academy Awards and was in the top 10 at the box office of 1951. So, no pressure, how do we follow An American in Paris? One of the big trends, and I talked about this at An American in Paris, is that what Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer used to do with their musicals is they would create these, what I call songbook films, which were movies surrounding the songbooks of different composers and songwriters, like Till the Clouds Roll By from 1946, which is a totally inaccurate biography of composer Jerome Kern, or Words and Music about Rodgers and Hart. And then with Singin with American in Paris, they did the Gershwin songbook. But they, instead of doing a biography of the Gershwins, they actually created a narrative story that used all the songs of George and Ira Gershwin. So what producer Arthur Freed, the legendary producer at MGM who produced all of the great MGM musicals there, he got the idea of, why don't we save some money by doing a musical songbook of all the songs that I wrote with Nasio Herb Brown. Dozens of songs from movies, all going back to the early 30s, and that's all the songs that are in Singin' in the Rain. I won't start naming them. You know them. But all of those songs come from the movies. Unlike the Gershwins and the other composers that they made movies about, Nasio Herb Brown and Arthur Freed wrote songs for movies. So when it was time to come up with a screenplay, the writing team of Adolph Green, Benny Comden and Adolph Green, they decided, why don't we make a musical about the movies? And the result is the screenplay for Singin' in the Rain, a movie about the dawning of sound. What could be more about the movies than that huge change in time and in Hollywood at that time? Chosen to direct was Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly, I said in American in Paris, I think Gene Kelly should have gotten co-director credit on American in Paris, because he did all the choreography, he was involved with the casting and the staging. He did as much work as Minnelli, easily, in my opinion. So on this film, he did get co-director credit with his friend Stanley Donen, who was only 28 years old, and he was already directing movies. He and Gene Kelly had directed On the Town in 1949, which was also a great success, and so they were a logical choice. When it came time for casting, Gene Kelly was going to play the lead, and he was a big enough star at that time that MGM thought that they could save some money by casting not so big stars. Though Gene Kelly did put up a fight. He wanted fellow MGM musical stars like Jane Powell or his discovery for An American in Paris, Leslie Caron, to play opposite him. But Louis B. Mayer and Arthur Freed said, you know what, you're a big enough star, you can carry this movie. We're giving you some newcomer who had a hit record with Abba Dabba Honeymoon from 1915. So they went with this then 18-year-old girl named Debbie Reynolds. Now, there are differing reports on this. Debbie Reynolds, her whole life said, Gene didn't want me in that movie. I wasn't supposed to be cast. Patricia Ward Kelly, Gene Kelly's widow, who's currently finishing the autobiography of Gene Kelly, she claims, now granted, she was his wife, so she's probably more sympathetic to him, that Gene always wanted it to be Debbie Reynolds. So it depends on, it's just a matter of who you want to believe, really. In my personal opinion, considering reports from other people on the set, like Donald O'Connor and others, I think Gene was not too pleased to have a non-dancer and non-experienced star playing opposite him. That's what I believe. And he was Gene Kelly. He was a perfectionist, he was a very technical person, very professional person, and didn't take much from this 18-year-old girl, who was an 18-year-old girl, you know? She could only do so much and only be so much. But of course, because she was Debbie Reynolds and was so talented and worked so hard, she kept up with a professional like Gene Kelly on only her first starring role in a movie, so more power to Debbie. Who else? Who else should we talk about and get into? Me? Oh, I'm Jack. I like movies. I'm Jack Fields. I'm a scriptwriter at Turner Classic Movies. Sure. Donald O'Connor. I'm getting there. Donald O'Connor started in vaudeville as a child, and he had been making movies as early as 12 years old in the 1930s. He served in World War II, and when he came back, you know, as I was researching today, I was looking, how did Donald O'Connor get cast in this? Because he wasn't under contract to MGM, and there were other dancers there that were under contract that could have carried that role, so it really is kind of a mystery how exactly Donald O'Connor got cast, but he was extremely talented and didn't cost much money because he wasn't a huge star, and so he was cast. And also, again, this is more of an opinion thing, but I don't think that the character that Donald O'Connor plays was intended to be as big a character as it became. But I think because Donald O'Connor was Donald O'Connor, such a great personality and such a great dancer and so funny, that he ended up stealing as much of the picture as he did. So, and you'll notice, yeah, it's Debbie Reynolds in only her first starring role, and Donald O'Connor above the title, there with Gene Kelly. So, good for them. Jean Hagen was a character actress. The role of Lena Lamont was originally written with Judy Holliday in mind, which that makes a lot of sense. If you watch Lena Lamont, she's a pretty close spoof of Judy Holliday in Born Yesterday, that ditzy, very blonde and silly character, but still lovable, even though she's the villainess. Judy Holliday was offered the role, but it was a supporting role, so after winning an Oscar for Born Yesterday, she said, I can do better than that. And she could have. Though she would have been wonderful, but Jean Hagen is great, and Gene Kelly later called her the glue of the whole picture. And I would have to agree with that. As she scored the only film's Oscar nomination for the actors, it also got another Oscar nomination for the score, but that's it. Just her and the film score are the only ones who got any awards recognition at the time. The film did well. It did even break the top 10 of 1952, but it wasn't a huge box office success. It's only over time that that the reputation of Singin' in the Rain has built and built and built. A little bit of trivia for you. Some of these you may have heard already, but there are some things to correct. There is no milk in the Singin' in the Rain sequence. There's no milk in the water to make it more visual. That was done with backlighting. It is true that Gene Kelly was very ill when he shot the Singin' in the Rain number. He had a 103-degree fever, and it took 2.5 days to shoot. So when you watch that tonight, you'll be even more impressed with Gene Kelly in that sequence. Debbie Reynolds told a great story when I saw her at a screening of this movie in Hollywood. She said, and I don't know how true all of these stories are. You know, you hear stories by people who are showbiz people and like to tell stories, but she said that for the You Were Meant for Me number, that when she has to stand up on the ladder, and Jean is there looking at her, that she had a stick of gum, and she put that stick of gum on the ladder while they were shooting, and that at one point Gene Kelly's headpiece got caught on that stalk of gum, and he was very mad after that. I don't know if that's true, but it is true that Gene Kelly wore a hairpiece, so maybe. Maybe. Harold Rawson, the cinematographer, great cinematographer of many MGM musicals, like An American in Paris again. Walter Plunkett, the wonderful costume designer, he specialized in period pieces. Walter Plunkett is the costume designer from Gone with the Wind, for example. And that shows you not only was he good at period pieces, but what a range of period pieces, from the 1920s to the Civil War. And it's beautiful clothes, and a ton of clothes in this movie. It's just such an extravaganza, isn't it? And with so many people and so many things, and Walter Plunkett designed all of those costumes, all of that wardrobe. I'm getting tired of just listing the credits, so what are you guys' thoughts on Singin' in the Rain? Questions about Singin' in the Rain? Debbie certainly was, and Gene Kelly certainly was, as was Stanley Donen. They were all under contract to the Freak Unit, which produced all of those great MGM musicals. Well, Gene Kelly did other things besides just act in the movies. You know, he was the co-director, the choreographer, so he did pretty well. I know that Gene Kelly wasn't crazy about Louis B. Mayer and how he ran his studio, but he certainly succeeded there. I don't know their exact salaries. I don't have that stat with me, but I assume very well he continued to make movies and continue to be a movie star, and movie stars got paid pretty well then. And Debbie Reynolds. Well, I don't know that stat exactly. I should look that up. That's interesting. But it's Debbie Reynolds', I think, third or fourth movie and her first leading role. And it's Gene Kelly's. Gene Kelly had been in the movies for over 10 years by this time and made dozens of movies by this time. So, yes, ma'am.
How you said that the film obviously become more popular. How does that happen?
When I'm asked questions like that, I simply say art lasts. Great art lasts. I don't know how movies of today will be in 65 years. I don't know. Maybe we will be giving discussions about 50 Shades of Grey in 65 years. But, the best movies and the best art lasts. And, I know that's a pretty general answer, but that's my answer. Its reputation has built and built and built, that's true. Also with retrospective things, like film festivals and movies like That's Entertainment, which look back at the material and analyze the material and see which... I don't like judging best and worst, but what holds up, I guess, is a good way to put it. How about you? What do you think?
I think the film festival aspect of it, believe me, I'm not very microphone. I think the film festival aspect of it has helped a lot of fields or classic movies, and then of course our classic films also.
Yeah, and technological advances like home video and reshowings on television, yeah. A good example, I think, is The Wizard of Oz. Was not commercially successful, but when it was re-aired on television, even when it was all shown in black and white, its reputation and following just built and built and built.
That's the same thing that happened with Jamie Stewart's Wonderful Life. It was a box office disaster, but now it's one of the great holiday movies all about.
And it premiered in, I believe, May, was when It's a Wonderful Life opened. Yes, sir? Fantasia, sure. Sure, did not do well. Lots of movies did not do well, but it's, to go back to your original question, it's what stands the test of time. Yeah.
What kind of scripts do you
Me? So the guy that comes out, welcome to TCN, now we're showing this. I write those. Well, no, I mean, if we're showing a movie and it's whatever's being introduced by Ben Mankiewicz or Jeffrey Basler, I write some of those scripts.
Are the talks between two people scripted?
No, not those, not those. And then I probably shouldn't share too much because I don't want to get you guys to stop watching this. Not a lot of their own research is done themselves.
Is there a relationship between Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire?
A relationship? I mean,
They can see
yeah. I mean, they were both under contract to MGM and both making musicals and both geniuses of their crafts. I don't think that there was any real competition or rivalry. I mean, it's inevitable. I mean, when you talk to musical buffs, it's like Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly. But I mean, they were both just so fantastic, and I mean, they appeared together in a sequence in the Ziegfeld Follies, the 1945 film Ziegfeld Follies. They do a dance number together, and then they co-hosted That's Entertainment 2 in 1970. I want to say 7. I want to say 77. But no, they were both under contract to MGM and both worked with same directors, same co-stars, same people. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
How was Debbie Reynolds recognized in this film, and then what did she do shortly after?
Yeah, well, this was her first leading role, and after that she went on to continue to make mostly comedies, mostly romantic comedies, like Tammy and the Bachelor, which we're showing later, and then the occasional musical. This morning, or this afternoon, we showed The Unsinkable Molly Brown from '64, which she earned her Oscar nomination for, and which was her favorite of her films. But she continued to work steadily. And then Debbie Reynolds, I'm just so impressed with her. She did it all. She did television. She went to Broadway in the '70s. She always had a cabaret act. She was one of the first movie stars to recognize the importance of preserving Hollywood heritage. And she did her big collection. And she had intended to open a museum in Las Vegas, but that didn't happen. But she just worked so hard, all the way up until the end. When I saw her in person, she was always, you know, up there entertaining people, and I don't know if anybody ever worked harder than Debbie Reynolds in the history of movies or show business. She did it all, and she loved it. That's what she used to say. That's what she always wrote about. I remember when we saw her here in 2010, she kept saying, well, I had all my husbands and they took all my money, and so I had to do this and I had to do that. And she's just a wonderful woman. I'm so thrilled to have seen her in person a few times. Yeah. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Oh.
How did they handle Debbie Reynolds' lack of dancing experience, since even with her feet planted on the ground?
Right. Well, she was a gymnast. She was a gymnast, which she had studied in high school and as a young woman. And she worked so hard. She studied dance for months and months and trained for months and months. And she tells a wonderful story, which you all may have heard. This is a pretty famous story of how after a grueling day of rehearsals, she was just so depressed. I'll never be good enough. I'll never be able to do it. And she went under a piano and just started crying. And there was a man came up and talked to her. Again, this is a story that's kind of too beautiful in Hollywood make-believe to be true, but I like to believe it because I like the Hollywood make-believe. And that man was Fred Astaire. And Fred Astaire said, Debbie, dancing is going to be the hardest thing you will ever have to do. And he took her to his studio, and he let her watch him rehearse, which he never ever did for anybody. And she said that watching him and how stressed and frustrated he was, that gave her hope to carry on and drive to carry on. And she told stories. She said, A wonderful quote from Debbie Reynolds. The two most painful experiences of her life were giving birth and singing in the rain. And I mean, she, at one point after the Good Morning number, they took her little blue shoes off and she was bleeding, and she actually went to the hospital with exhaustion. But you wouldn't know it because she's so wonderful in the movie, would you? What else? Oh, come on. We've got time. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Oh, no, I was just raising my hand there.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if somebody already asked this question, but because Debbie Reynolds was like, you say she was new at it, ingenue, she had to train hard and practice, and I had read that Gene Kelly didn't want her in the role. Why did they pick her?
Well, she was cheap because she wasn't a star, so she was easy to get cast, and I did tell this earlier, but my understanding is that because she had a hit record with Abba Dabba Honeymoon from 1950, that she was big enough that they said, okay, we can build her up. And that's what they used to do in those days at the studio system. They would find some talent, and they would give them little bit parts, and then they would build them up. And yeah, and that's what happened with Debbie. Debbie's a perfect example of what the studio system was capable of and did in building up its talent.
What year did that movie come out?
Abba Dabba Honeymoon? Or the song Abba Dabba?
No, the one we're gonna watch.
Oh, tonight, 1952. It premiered in March of 52. What else? Yes, ma'am. Gene Kelly was 39.
And what was she?
She was 18 when they started. The vast majority of movies were filmed on studio sets. The very first was On the Town, where they shot that scene in New York, the New York number. But almost all, especially the musicals, were done on sound stages, which is impressive. It was so impressive when you think about it, with those sets and all the construction, all the work that was done in those movies in those days.
How many years did it take to make the movie?
How many years did it take to make the movie? Production started in the fall and the winter of 51, and the movie premiered in 52. So about and movies. I mean, do you say like the shooting or like the earliest parts, like the script making and all that stuff? I would say well over a year. I would say. I mean, from start to finish. From okay, let's do a follow-up to An American in Paris to premiering in March of 52, I would say easily over a year.
Is this a follow-up or?
Well, I wouldn't call it a follow-up, but what I meant by that is with the success of An American in Paris and that formula of building a movie around, the next big musical, the next big MGM musical. What else? I love this movie. I love talking about this movie. What else do you guys want to know?
I don't have a question, but I have a story.
Okay.
My son, who's now 33, has always loved movies, because I started when he was very small watching old movies with me, and that was his all-time favorite. When he was 3 years old, the first real joke he ever told was Donald O'Connor's calling a cab. Still loves old movies.
Yeah. What else? Yes, sir.
In the Singing in the Rain number, did the waterspouts in the rain cover the entire set, or are they in a narrow channel?
They actually built, it was shot partly on the back lot, but they actually dug out those little ditches that he splashes in and things like that. Yeah, it was all built, all constructed. Yes, ma'am?
What is your favorite scene in this movie?
Well, my favorite scene, I have a couple. I love the title song number. I love Good Morning, Good Morning. My favorite scene was cut from the film, which you can YouTube it. It's Debbie Reynolds singing "You Are My Lucky Star." That's the very last song in the movie, and it's Gene Kelly mostly singing it, but there was a cut version where Debbie sings it when she's, after the You Were Meant For Me number, when she's walking around the back lot and she sees a poster of Don Lockwood and Lena Lamont, she sings "You Are My Lucky Star" to his picture. It's an absolutely charming number, but it was cut. But print of it survives, and you can see it on YouTube.
Thank you.
What else? What are some of your guys' favorite scenes, and what do you want to know about them? Yeah, make them laugh. Donald O'Connor says that he had a 4-pack-a-day smoking habit at the time, and it was also to help ease the stress of making the whole movie. And that by the end, he was just so exhausted. And that song, Make 'Em Laugh, is one of two, that and Moses Supposes are the only two original songs written directly for the movie. And that song, Make 'Em Laugh, is almost a virtual copy of the Cole Porter song, Be a Clown. You know, if you listen to Be a Clown, you'll be like, oh, that's where they got that. Yeah.
How long did it take to shoot that?
The Make 'Em Laugh number, it is an extraordinary number. It is an extraordinary number. I don't have that written down, but I assume multiple days. Yes, ma'am.
I think one of the best scenes was Sid Charisse in the green dress.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Sid Charisse had to drop out of An American in Paris due to pregnancy. So Gene Kelly wanted to make it up to her by giving her a nice part in his next musical, even though she was taller than him. But so he choreographed it so that doesn't look that way. Sid Charisse had bit parts in musicals, mostly as just a walk-on dancer. And it was with her appearance here in Singin' in the Rain that she was able to move on to leading lady status with her next movie, The Bandwagon, which we need to show at this place. Yes, she did. From another planet with those legs. Yes, ma'am.
How tall was Kate Kelly?
I believe 5'8". And Sid Charisse was 5'9". So, yes, ma'am. He was married to Betsy Blair, the actress at the time. He had one marriage after that, and then his last marriage was to a writer named Patricia Ward, who I've met a few times. And she was hired to help him write his autobiography, and they fell in love in the process. And she has a wonderful one-woman show called Gene Kelly: The Legacy, which I haven't seen, but I think it would be great. I actually pitched Patricia Ward Kelly to the powers that be here to maybe come and talk about the movie, but that didn't happen. So, also Todd Fisher I've met a few times, and I thought he would have been great to talk about both his mom and his sister's movie. I emailed them both for comments here tonight, but I didn't get a response. But yeah. What else? Yes, ma'am.
Leslie Caron, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, the one that comes out in America.
Caron. Yeah.
She comes out a little in a bit part in Singin' in the Rain as a groupie or a fan.
Not that I have heard or read.
Because it looks like her in the very beginning when his fans are like surrounding the limo and he's getting off.
Interesting.
And I said, wow, she's in that.
I haven't heard or read that, but one person I haven't mentioned is our friend Rita Moreno here at Plaza Classic, who was 19 when she appeared in Singin' in the Rain. Rita Moreno, just grasp this. Whenever I think about this, I'm like, my God. Rita Moreno is in Singin' in the Rain, The King and I, and West Side Story. I mean, immortal right there, right? In Singin' in the Rain, she plays Lena Lamont's friend, her co-friend. Yeah, her character name is slipping because I'm. But you'll see her. Yeah. Zelda. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. She's another actress at the studio, and she's friends with Lena Lamont, and tips Lena Lamont off about what's going on. Yeah. Another bit of trivia. I could go on and on. So yeah, I understand if you guys have to go get seats for the movie, but Debbie Reynolds didn't do all of her own singing. Yeah. And it's so funny because the movie is about dubbing and voice dubbing and things like that. Should we just go watch the movie? Okay.
what to talk about.
Good job.
Oh, sorry, Lou.